One good thing about being a Blue Angel, everybody worked together as a team. It was a team to do the best you could. Okay, well, I actually grew up in West Virginia, and in the hills of West Virginia, about 30 miles away where Chuck Yeager grew up in a hollow. We were watching the boat races down in Charleston, West Virginia, and it was in 1948, and here I am 8 years old, and we're watching the races. The narrator comes up and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, off to your left you'll see Captain Chuck Yeager do a flyby in his P-80 jet." And boy, the crowd just went crazy, and I said, you know what? From then on, I knew I was going to be a fighter pilot. And in 1965, it took me actually 7 years to go through college. Problem was, I had to work 3 jobs. My parents didn't have any money, I had to commute to school. The naval recruiter drives up and he says, "Come on guys, he says, I'm going to show you some movies about naval aviation." This guy was a highly motivated speaker, laid it on the line, and I think the killer was, he said, "Guys, if you can land aboard an aircraft carrier, this separates the men from the boys by 10,000 feet. And I said, yes. Checked off the block, took the aptitude test, and then went up to Anacostia, Washington, took the physical, and then was sworn in. 6 weeks later, I was down in Pensacola. The Navy really did a good job of training. I can't say enough good things about how good the training is in the Navy. They knew exactly what to give you, and they knew everybody's capabilities. And then when you start getting close to get your wings, then you start looking at the Phantom or the F-8. And I said, well, I want to go the F-8. It was a supersonic, single seat, 420 millimeter cannons. It was the last of the gunfighters. It took an aggressive nature. You had to know what you were doing. So I put in for the F-8s, and I was selected for the F-8s, and then went to Miramar. I was more or less selected. There was a couple of us selected out of the class who were must pumps. And it sort of sounds like a little pretentious, but they put us through somewhat of more of an accelerated course. And so once I did my CQs off the America, 3 weeks later, I'm flying missions off of the USS Ticonderoga in Vietnam. That's how fast the training went. You go there, flying the F-8, it's sort of a unique group of guys. You're flying I wouldn't say arrogant, I would just say very confident. And one of our mottos were, "Yea, though I fly through the valley of shadow of death, I fear no evil, because I'm the meanest mother in the valley." So every time we went in there, you felt confident you can kick somebody's butt, and you're going to do it because you're aggressive and you know you're an F-8 pilot. But I started thinking about the Blue Angels. We had J.D. Davis was in our squadron, and he goes to become the narrator. And I'm thinking, well, J.D. can do it. And he started staying in contact with me. And he said, "Bill, you ought to put in for it." But the requirement was you needed 1,500 hours of flight time. And coming back from Vietnam, I had about 1,000 hours of total flight time. So I elected to go to VT-25, Advanced Training Squadron in Beeville, instead of the F-8 RAG, because I could get more flight time down there. And they made me the tactics phase instructor. So now I'm teaching tactics. When I checked in January of 1970, until I left, I acquired over 1,000 hours of flight time. So I was averaging over 100 hours, 110 hours a month. And then on the weekends, thank goodness, I could take a student on a cross country and chase the Blue Angels. So that was one of the requirements, so they get to know who you were. And then I got a call from Boss Hall. He said, "Lieutenant Switzer, this is Commander Hall." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, you know, we've been talking about your performance, you know, and everybody's getting to know your personality and everything else. And he says, "We got a couple concerns about you, and we'd like to address them." And one thing was, I tended to wear the same wheat pants and blue shirt at all these functions, just because that's the only thing I could put in the F9, you know. And he said, "Do you have any other clothes besides that?" And I said, "Oh, yes, sir." And I said, "I can buy new clothes too." So he said, "Well, okay." He said, "By the way, congratulations. The team has voted you as a new member of the Blue Angels." And I didn't know it, but it was up hot mic. Everybody was listening to the phone conversation. So they drilled me a couple good ones. And so there I was, selected for the Blue Angel. Mind you, I have no F4 experience. So I have to go to Miramar in VF-121 to get checked out in the F4. Passed all the tests, and then I was NATOPS qualified in about 3 to 4 weeks. Acquired maybe 40 hours of flight time, and then we go to winter training in El Centro the first week in January. And that's about all the flight time I had in the F4. They asked me if I wanted to be the narrator, and I said, "No, I don't think so. I'd prefer to be a demo pilot." And they said, "Okay, well, we'll make you the opposing solo pilot, number 6, and Skip Umstead is the lead solo." So Skip was, well, he was dynamic in every case. Mainly it was just low flybys, high speed passes, and you had to get your timing. You had to know where the 1.5 mile checkpoint was. And we worked on timing. And if you think about it, with 2 solos approaching each other at 1,000 miles an hour, that's over 1,600 feet per second. So you really had to be precise, because if you're off 1 second, you're off about 1,300 feet from the center point. And that was really demanding. So I'd say the first 2 weeks, when you pull on 7 or 8 Gs, if you're not conditioned to it, because we don't wear G suits with the Blue Angels. So when I pulled on 7 or 8 Gs, I'd get my nose up 45 degrees up, and then I'd black out just like that. Well, it got to the point I was going into, I wouldn't say convulsions, but I could sit there and shake in the cockpit, now to recover about 7,000 or 8,000 feet. I was, wow, that was interesting. And then you regain consciousness, and then you come back and do it again. And after about a week or 2, I finally said, "Hey, Skip, I think I may have a brain tumor. Something's wrong." I said, "Every time I go from an inverted to upright and pull 7 or 8 Gs, I said, I black out and I start shaking in the cockpit." And he said, "Oh, that happens to me all the time." He said, "I was wondering when you're going to bring that up." He said, "Oh, you'll get used to it." And so some things they tell you, some things you have to figure it out. First, a couple of air shows were fine, and you had to work hard. And formation flying was demanding. Everything was demanding, So, but we did have an air show down in Eufaula, Alabama, and the flight line was right on top of a river. And one of my maneuvers was to do the inverted to inverted flyby. And I rolled inverted. And J.D. Davis says, "Ladies and gentlemen, you look off to your right, you see Lieutenant Bill Switzer do the inverted to the..." And J.D. just followed me, because what happened in the cockpit, there was no horizon, and a cardinal rule, you never look inside the cockpit when you're inverted. You keep your nose right on the horizon, because your instruments are lagging and they're not going to help you anyhow. So I just happened to look inside my cockpit for a nanosecond, then looked outside, and all I saw was the ripples of the water. That's how low I was. So once I saw that, then I had to push up on the nose, and I don't think I left a rooster tail, but I left a hell of a wake inverted in the aircraft, and still was able to recover from that inverted to an inverted maneuver. And that was an attention getter. On the Far East tour was very interesting. We had an air show in Manila. The crowd was estimated maybe 50 to 80,000 people. So we go out there, and there wasn't 80,000. There must have been at least 150 to 200,000 people. And as we're taxiing out, the crowd restraint just went bonkers. There was no crowd restraint. They're starting to come close to the runway. Well, Boss Hall gets the Diamond Airborne and does their thing, and then Skip does the dirty roll on takeoff. Now they're getting closer, and he does the dirty roll, and he gets airborne. And I'm thinking, well, these guys are basically underneath my wing. And so I revved up the engine a couple times, see if I had scared them off. And I actually lost sight of them because I couldn't see where they were. But then when it was time for me to take off, I just released the brakes. And so I did the low transition and got airborne safely. But because they lost control of the crowd, we had to land over to Naval Air Station Cuby Point. It was about 75 miles northwest of Manila. Because of the demanding trip to the Far East, it was about a good 6 weeks of flying, show sites and visiting and dignitaries and all that. It was phenomenal. Nobody had any hard feelings. There weren't any personality clashes. Everybody just blended together. We knew what our mission was. And during the whole time that I was on that team in 1971, there weren't any personality conflicts. It was just like a band of brothers. We just got together and we all knew what we had to do, and everybody worked their butt off to make sure we were precise as we could be. They were looking at the overall team makeup, and the new flight leader coming in, they felt like I could do a good job of flying the slot position. So they said, okay, Switzer, you're gonna fly slot. And I said, yeah, sounds good to me. Going from the opposing solo and the dynamics performance of the aircraft to formation flying, it took a different scan pattern, and you knew you were the backup to the flight lead. If he didn't have the right parameters before he started up, then you would tell him, hey boss, we need to add the power or pull more G's, or we're over the top, too slow, or whatever. You're sort of a backup when you felt like it was necessary to call it. One thing I was impressed about though was when you're flying slot is how much the wings actually move. You know, go up and down, maybe 18 inches just by virtue of the aerodynamics of the airplane, the flow coming off the wingtips and so forth. But everybody's doing it together. And if anybody gets out beyond the limits of air show quality, then I'd say, okay, you need to move it up number 2 or number 3, a couple, like a foot, or you're too low. So there was some dialogue from the slot pilot to the wingman, telling them how to balance the formation just right for the air show quality. A lot of people ask you, what's it feel like to be a celebrity? And you know what? For the first year, you don't think you're a celebrity. You don't even think you're a celebrity the second year. You don't think you're a celebrity at all, because that's the job you're trained to do. You've been very fortunate to be selected for it. You train hard to be able to do it better than anybody else, than any other team. After 2 years, you're tired. You need a break, and I could see where they limit it to 2 years if they can, because you do get very complacent flying inverted, like 100 feet or 200 feet above the ground. You get very complacent flying lower to the ground. And Boss Hall, again, he could put the formation into the weeds, and I mean in the weeds, to the point a couple guys say, boss, no lower. And I know they have altitude restrictions now, but they didn't have them then, except we had to know where the ground was, and you just didn't go out there and embarrass yourself. I was very proud to be a Blue Angel. The camaraderie, it couldn't have been any better. You got to have trust in each other, and that doesn't happen overnight. That just comes with training, and you get to know each other's personality. And if you know somebody's having a bad day, you know how to cope with it or how to help them out. Everybody changes a little bit, but you always have the end goal, and that's to put on the best air show you can. What I learned from Boss Hall, the standards, you can achieve any standards if you put your mind to it. You set your goals high because you can achieve them if you work at them and you stay positive. And I'd say working towards perfection, going to the nth detail, the camaraderie, being a good listener, and demanding the best out of your people and being part of them. I learned that from the Blue Angels.